Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rewind by Affinity Streaming. I am Contrell, joined today by special guest Ed. How are you, Ed?
I'm doing fine, Contrell. Great to be here.
Great to have you. Thank you, Ed. Today's movie is called Hellfighters, 1968, 2 hours and 1 minute. It is rated G. And if you have not seen this movie, spoilers are ahead. But first, before we get started, can you please give us a follow, like, subscribe on our social media networks? We are on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. We are at Affinity Streaming Podcast. All right, Ed. So Hellfighters, 1968. Chance Buckman fights international oil rig fires. Tell me a little bit about your history with this movie and how you came across it.
Sure. Well, first of all, being a senior, this was a movie that was going on when I was a teenager. And being a typical male teenager, I'm excited about the whole thing. It was an incredible thing to watch and exciting and all that stuff. But I was a big John Wayne fan, not a John Wayne Western fan because I wasn't one much for Westerns. But bottom line is, it was just really just a cool thing to watch. What I really loved about it in retrospect, well, not in retrospect, but back then, I was like a lot of kids, especially back then when I was in high school. We took aptitude tests for what you were going to be in life, and mine came back as a fighter pilot.
Nice.
And it was Vietnam era. And my parents were like, "Well, no, that ain't happening." I was in a small private high school with my graduating class of 29 male students, and they were like, "Nah, that ain't coming." So I was totally fascinated with airplanes and aviation, and the Jetstar, which is the airplane in the movie, was the first business jet that was actually ever came into the sky. So it hooked me on all kinds of levels, and to this day, it was I guess it was a transformational kind of thing for me as a kid all the way through life. Even to this day, I've got a hankering for equipment and toys and stuff like that.
Nice.
And as you know, we've known each other a while. I love to play with the toys.
Nice. Uh,
So
so, so Hellfighters was directed by Andrew McLaughlin, starring John Wayne, as you mentioned. It only had 13% critics on Rotten Tomatoes, but a 74% audience, and a 5.2 on Film Affinity. So I'm guessing it resonated more with audiences than it did with critics. Uh, but I enjoyed it. It started a little slow, but I got into
yeah.
it, and the love story was the part that grabbed me the most. Like, what did you think about that part?
Well, first of all, remember critics weren't out there that much in 1968. People used to do something which is really rare now. They used to talk to one another. So that's why you see a 74%, viewers things because, God forbid people actually talk anymore. That's what we did back then. You actually talked. So that's where that came from. As far as I love the whole thing about it. I mean, I grew up in a household where, there was no male female differentials. It was everybody was equal. So I have a long history of, I don't want to say female advocacy, but equality. So that movie was perfectly in line with that because it had a very strong female personality and character in there who essentially told the chauvinistic guys to go, what off. So,
Yeah.
and it's been that way the whole entire life. So I think that's fantastic. And, you know the spontaneity of it with oh, I've known you for 3 weeks, so let's get married. that,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff did happen back then, and
Yeah.
a lot of times it worked, but but
Yeah.
it was fun. I love the multiple levels of the plot.
Yeah.
You had excitement, you had fun things, exciting equipment and scenery. Back then, you got to remember, they didn't have the graphics and stuff they did. That was all kind of real life
Yeah, real
special
fires.
effects.
I was
Yeah.
wondering about that. There were
Oh
a lot
yeah,
of like
they were
just
all
real
real.
fires,
Yeah.
yeah, in the background. Or I don't know if they were actually on site for those and recorded them, or
In my mind, they were definitely right there,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that drum was full of TNT.
yeah,
So, and they didn't care about the asbestos in the blanket,
yeah, yeah,
So that's all kind of cool stuff. So I think like I said, for me, it's nostalgic. I think it's important that the folks of the generations now actually see some of that.
yeah,
That things were very different and more simple, but also more basic. And but things were okay back then too.
yeah.
It wasn't so bad. So
So they were and the movie opens with them with an explosion. My first thought was, why don't those guys stop, drop, and roll? But they just kept running on fire. So Chase and his team get called out. I guess it's a lucrative business if he had his own jet and
oh yeah,
all business. Uh, and
don't
it's a
forget he had a helicopter too.
helicopter. And I don't know if you knew it's based loosely based on the life of a real guy,
I did. Yeah.
Red Adair. So
Red Adair. I actually remember Red Adair because I'm an old shit. So, but
nice.
yeah, so
Eh,
all that stuff was like real life.
yeah.
That was pretty cool. The funnier things for me about that was they had a helicopter, they had a jet, and then they drove station wagons.
uh,
Nowadays it would be a Lamborghini,
yeah.
a Venator, or something like that. But now,
Yeah,
let me
they
just do
had
this
to say
station wagon.
keep it simple.
Yeah,
So Chance, what a great name by the way. Chance
yeah.
has a near accident, so he's in the hospital, and so against his wishes, they bring his daughter, Tish, who's played by Catherine Ross. Have you seen Catherine in any other movies?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
she
can't
was.
remember the exact ones, but they were all.
I only
She's top notch.
remember The Graduate, but I'm sure she's been in a lot of stuff.
The Graduate is that's another whole one. I suggest you do that one. That one's got some
Yeah,
underlying,
yeah.
things going there. But
So she visits him. She meets the Playboy partner, Greg Parker, right? Greg.
Greg Parker,
Yeah,
I,
Greg Parker was played by Jim Hutton.
yeah, I'm not a big Jim Hutton fan, but he was. I don't think that if it was me, I don't think that would have been the casting person I did for that role.
Okay.
But not that I care back then. I mean, but I guess it worked, but
Yeah.
not wasn't a big fan of that. I liked the character, but I didn't like him as an actor in there.
Okay.
It's just too lanky.
Yeah, he was
So
tall. He seemed tall and lanky.
yeah,
Yeah. So Greg, of course, marries the daughter, which I thought was interesting. I feel like maybe if we were like partners for years, I would like your daughter would be off limits. But
well, if you remember the scene where he opens the door of the hospital room and just clocks him right across the chest,
yeah, yeah,
I mean that is definitely the way it was back then. I mean, come here, boom, and then let's talk about it now. And then what? Half a scene later, welcome, son.
yeah, yeah. He
So
did that a couple times in the movie
yeah.
with the Australian fire team. He like just walked in on them and punched them and then their friends after the fight.
Well, I'll share with you from a business point of view for me. One of my biggest expenses was from that movie because when he's made the line, the boss always pays,
Set it up, lady, and I'll pay you. The boss pays.
I always pay.
Yeah,
And I've done
good.
that my whole career. I just celebrated 50 years in this business in May 6th, go figure. And all that time, I always pay. I believe that line hit home for me, and was character building, I guess, in a way. But worked out great. The folks
That's a
around me like it.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Uh, so Greg marries Tish, and Tish is different from her mom, who we find out like she left because she didn't want to live the life of a firefighter's wife or whatever his business is. She didn't want to be a part of his dangerous lifestyle.
right.
But she's different. She wants to be there at every scene with Greg.
Yep.
Uh, so that was interesting. I like their dynamic. You know, um, I guess they were trying to show the difference between the mom and the daughter, but anyway, I like that
I think it
dynamic.
was more evolution of generations. I mean,
True.
my daughter is a combination of both, and she's got both a better. She's better in some, not so much in others. But that's what generations are all about. And I love that part of the character where if you remember, we're talking 1950s when Chance and the other, and I forget the character's name of the wife, um, and where they were
Madeline Buckman.
Madeline, that's right. And Madeline was the heiress to a department store fortune, so she was a very independent lady, and but then back then it was the housewife kind of mentality. Whatever the husband did, you followed.
Right.
But second level generation, when in the 60s and early 70s, I guess by that point, was different. It was like, no, I'm gonna do what I want to do too, but I want to be right there with you.
Yeah.
So what's a funny line scene, Contrell, is when Trish follows them to the New Orleans fire, and then she comes flying down the road in her pajamas, which was hysterical, and they were all upset because she was in her pajamas.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my gosh, nowadays you'd be lucky, if she got through the Homeland Security. But
Yeah. And she like shows up on a helicopter with deli sandwiches one day.
yeah, oh, that one was great when she
up,
flew in on the with the dynamite on the helicopter on the poison gas well fires. That was pretty cool. So what was cool in the plot too, Control, was the escalation of the danger.
Yeah.
They it started off like a stupid comment to make simple, where the guy hits his hard hat and blows out an incandescent lamp that blows up a whole oil well.
Yeah.
Chances of that happen, not that realistic. But then we go all the way to poison gas wells, and then we go to,
guerrilla warfare.
Guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
Where the guys are coming in jeeps with a whole army around them. But it's movies, and that makes it the fun part.
Yeah. So I think Chance, in watching Greg and his daughter, he's starting to get overprotective of Greg, and then he decides, you know what, I'm just going to leave the company to you because I want to go back with my ex-wife.
Yep.
And he leaves them the company as a wedding present. I don't know how easy that is to do. It's just like, hey, here's a wedding present. Here's my company.
Actually, it's pretty easy. I'm in the middle of it right now, so I can tell you.
All right, nice. So they decide they're going to remarry and blah, blah, blah. And that's when they have the big situation in Valenzuela where he's like, I need Chance Buckman to come back and help us out. And then they fight guerrillas and blow up. And I guess the big thing was the conversation between Tish and her mom. And she's like, it's easier to be there.
Yeah.
So somehow they show up in Venezuela and everybody's happy. Everyone falls in love and everyone was happy.
And then of course the State Department is involved, and just well, I guess it's the artistic license comes into play when Chance Buckman's coming out of the back of a Galaxy or whatever that plane was. I don't remember that plane too well. Is it just a big transport plane, Air Force? Can you imagine the United States sending an Air Force plane to Venezuela nowadays?
Yeah, no.
And
it was a cool scene though, with the plane opening up and him standing there with his cowboy hat on. It was a pretty cool scene.
And then a great line again. I spent a lot of your money, boss. But again, it's for me. It was nostalgic, but I think it was just a great, honest, pure entertainment plot.
Yeah, it was definitely entertaining. And it was the first movie that John Wayne got $1 million to star in. So,
is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
Do you know John Wayne was also a pilot when they showed him in the Jetstar flying? But the best part, which I thought the coolest thing about John Wayne, he said, "I'm not getting a license. You guys, I got planes, anything. I'll just fly them anytime I want." He flew helicopters and he flew planes, and never had Pilot's
Never
license.
had a pilot's license. So where does this rank on your John Wayne list of movies? Where is this your
This
favorite
one,
John Wayne?
I don't tend to rank. I kind of drift.
Okay.
I like another one called McHugh, which is where he plays I think a detective or something like that. But I don't. Again, John Wayne. I love In Harm's Way, which was an old movie about World War II. That was one of his better ones. But again, I don't technically tend to rank. But I must say I watched this one more than I've watched the other ones, if you want to use that metric. So
Okay, nice. So in the end, Ed, this is one of your favorite movies that you recommended to everyone to watch.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And again, for a few reasons. One, the nostalgic of it. I think it's great to see a different history of the world back then. Things were different. Nowadays, it's very crazy. Being like I said, the one of the best takeaways from this is never underestimate the gray squad, which is what we call us old guys who come out of retirement to go fix stuff. And we have a whole group of us that we call each other the group, the Gray Squad. We have breakfast up here every now and then. And John Wayne was part of that Gray Squad because when he came out of that, with his cowboy hat on out of the back of the transport, and they were like, "Oh, good chances here. We'll get you out of this."
Nice.
So,
Chance Buckman is here.
but what a great, aren't they great character names?
Chance Buckman.
Chance Buckman. So the Buckman Company. So
nice. Well, Ed, I want to thank you very much for joining me today on this podcast. It was a blast having you on, talking about some 1968 old movies, The Hellfighters, starring John Wayne.
Thanks, bud.
All right. Thanks, guys, for joining us. We will see you next time on Affinity Streaming Podcast. Have a good one. Bye-bye.